Hello, and welcome to the 12th Annual Naples International Film Festival. My name is Kathleen van Bergen, and it is my pleasure to be the CEO and President of Artis Naples. On behalf of everyone at Artis Naples and the Naples International Film Festival, we want to thank you for screening and thank you for joining us for this very special TalkBack Q&A. We would also like to thank our TalkBack Q&A sponsors, Stan and Saran Kroshar. Now, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome from the documentary film, The New Bauhaus, the director of this film, Alysa Nahmias. Welcome, Alysa.
Thanks, Kathleen. It's so wonderful to be here, and I'm really grateful to the Naples International Film Festival and Artis, and to Shannon and to you for presenting the film to this audience, and I'm happy to be here and talk with you about it.
Aw, thank you. Well, you probably didn't hear that raucous applause that happened right after I said your name. There were hundreds of people sitting in their houses, screening together, just so appreciative of the work that you've put into this film. So I just want to acknowledge all of them and let you know that the well is full. And while we look forward to bringing you to Naples at some point, thank you for spending time in this two-dimensional world right now.
Thank you so much. And, you know, I feel like I do hear it sometimes. Like, I feel like, you know, we can feel, or sometimes I get messages and I love that. We have our website, thenewbauhaus.com, if folks want to reach out. But it's so nice that we can actually go right to people's homes and feel connected in these ways at this really challenging time.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, as a multidisciplinary organization, there are so many ways that this film has been perfect for me personally, for our audiences. So I'd like to dive in by just saying that as a visual and performing arts organization, we're especially grateful for you to have brought this new Bauhaus philosophy to life. It does tie in so perfectly with our multidisciplinary mission. What was your connection to the new Bauhaus, and how did this passion start?
Well, when you put it that way, I'm like, wow, it really goes pretty far back in terms of my own interests in art, which, you know, started when I was younger. But of course, then I went to school at NYU. I did an interdisciplinary degree at the Gallatin School, and then I studied architecture. And so those were the contexts. And I worked at Dia Art Foundation and the museum in New York. So I was really in a gallery. I was in the art world. I knew I wanted to be a part of it, but also making things. And so those are the contexts in which I heard about Bauhaus and first heard Moholy Nagy's name. But I didn't really know about this school in Chicago. You know, I hadn't heard about, when you think about Chicago and Bauhaus, or when I was taught about Chicago and Bauhaus, the biggest name is Mies van der Rohe. You know, everyone hears about Mies in Chicago, and I don't even think I had known, you know, in college and graduate school that Moholy landed there. I knew him from the German Bauhaus and his work and his photography. But so when I heard, you know, that there was this school in Chicago that Moholy started and it was still in existence, and that was something that my producers Petter Ringbaum and Marquise Stillwell had done some work with the school, and so we decided to like pull on that thread and really get to know this institution, and figuring, I guess, the way my personal connection played in was like, if I don't know about this, and I had been pretty steeped in like art and design history, then it was something that was worth, you know, an undertold story, a kind of not necessarily overlooked, but not as well recognized as perhaps other aspects of Bauhaus in America, like Walter Gropius at Harvard or Black Mountain College or Mies in Chicago.
That's great. And I should back up and say that as you're storytelling, you were not only the director in this film, you're also one of the screenwriters and one of the producers. Can you share a little bit with us about how you balance all those roles as you were crafting it from script to editing floor?
Sure. It was, I mean, that's something that we often do in independent filmmaking, and is, you know, play these different roles. You know, the producing started at the beginning and really did a lot of that with Petter, and he played multiple roles on the film too as cinematographer, and did design and animation as well as producing. So there was already a kind of collaborative spirit and really a shared vision that was developing. Erin Wright came in as a producer, who's amazing, who also works at LACMA and does film production there and independently. And I think the balance is like really having that good team. And, you know, in the edit, working with Miranda Youssef, who's an incredible editor, and we really co-wrote the thing together, like sat down with tons of archival material, lots of footage in hand, and lots of ideas and potential to do graphics and narration and all of it, and thought through how do we want to structure this film in a way that is both true to the spirit of Moholy and Bauhaus and experimentation, but not imitative, like not trying to do things the way he did it in a literal way. And so those were really fun challenges that really drove the project, both in the creative work that we did with partnerships and financing and establishing relationships with all of the people we interviewed, but also in the edit room and beyond.
That's great. You really did embody part of his philosophy of this shared thinking and design. That's great.
It was fun.
Yeah. One of the things you might not know about Naples and our cultural campus, although you would and will when you come here, is that we just finished a massive repair and expansion of our museum. So architecture has been a part of our conversation recently. The wonderful firm of Weiss Manfredi, Marian Weiss and Michael Manfredi just finished our project on our campus.
Awesome, so, they're so talented.
Yeah, oh, I'm glad you know their work. They just won one of the projects in Los Angeles from where you were speaking this afternoon.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, the Tar Pits project. So it's very much a present thought for us to be looking at architecture of different generations and time, and also thinking about all of these multidisciplinary genres that we offer. Was there something that you experienced in reviewing and studying and bringing this new Bauhaus school to life that was a real surprise for you? I mean, we knew the architecture and design, but there's also this whole technology role. What else was a big surprise for you?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Moholy is not an architect, but he's a designer. So there was like getting into that world was super interesting. The graphic design, like who knew that? I mean, I didn't know until I started working on this project that things like the James Bond titles or the Dove soap bar or the Honey Bear were only at one remove from Bauhaus. Like those are Moholy's students, you know, who are, or Playboy magazine. But when you look at the first cover of that first issue of Playboy magazine and many others that Art Paul, who was Moholy's student, you know, was the art director for those, you see, you're like, oh, wow, the black and white and red and the way that Marilyn Monroe is cut out and the sort of collage, like, it actually, you can see modernism, European modernism and American modernism in dialogue. And so I loved finding those, like excavating some of those examples that where we could see Bauhaus as really interacting with and influenced by American, in many senses, American consumer culture. Those were surprising moments and ways that the past was literally in the present. Like if you have a Dove soap bar in your, you know, in your house today.
It's great. They were wonderful moments, these ahas and, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Another element of Naples is that many people have moved here from different places. And we have a tremendous Chicago influence. You might not know, nor should you, and maybe some of our screeners did not know, but our founder of the original Philharmonic Center for the Arts, now Artis Naples, Myra Janko Daniels, was married to the Mad Men inspired. So design and advertising is also a big part of our influence. I know that the film screened in Chicago. We have a tremendous population who spend winter months down in Naples and summer months in Chicago. How was it received there? I'm sure the pride was just oozing out of them, but would you share a little bit about Chicago's reaction to the new Bauhaus?
Yeah, that's so great. And we, you know, I didn't know that about Naples, although I knew, like, I come from, both my parents are from the Midwest. My mom is from Chicago, my dad's from Indiana, and my grandparents would go to Florida also. So they're kind of part of, not Naples, but other towns in Florida. And so I know that connection is so well traveled and like really and very deep and meaningful. We were lucky enough to premiere this film. We had like a double premiere in 1 week last year at the New York City Architecture and Design Film Festival as opening night, and also headlining a showcase at the Chicago International Film Festival of films on art and design. And those premieres were great. I say those because we actually had multiple screenings in Chicago. One was at the Museum of Contemporary Art, and one was at the cinema downtown. And both were full. And one of the amazing things about those Chicago premieres is that we got to have a lot of the people in the film attending the premieres. So Hatila Moholy-Nagy was there with her family who they're based in Ann Arbor, Michigan, but she came in, she loves any chance to come to Chicago. And we had Kenneth Josephson, the great photographer. We had Bob Tanner. We had Jan Tiki, who's a contemporary artist in the film. Liz Siegel, the art historian. So all the people in the film were there, a lot of them. Sadly, the photographer Barbara Crane had passed away, and there was this really, really meaningful moment to me when her longtime studio assistant and collaborator came up and was just like in tears of gratitude to see Barbara on screen and like hear her voice again. And so it was really a hometown premiere that gathered people who hadn't seen each other in a long time. Blanche Gilden, who's in the film, was there. So that was really, yeah, something we couldn't ever experience in another part of, although I say we couldn't experience, and it is special in Chicago, but the cool thing about this school is that there are alumni everywhere. You know, when we played at Palm Springs Film Festival in California, there were people who surprised me and said, my father went there, my mother went there, I went, you know, so we're really meeting people. No doubt in Naples, there are people who have connections to the new BAUHAUS, the School of Design, and the Institute of Design.
Incredible. That must have been really heartwarming for you.
It was so wonderful. Yeah, really great.
That's terrific. Would you mind sharing, just because you went there a little bit, what is it like? You know, we're having this 12th annual film festival, and it's the first time we haven't been able to fly in filmmakers, and we are missing that direct interaction with all of you. I have to believe it's reciprocal. So what's happening on your end? I know this is really satisfying, Alysa.
No, I mean, I miss you too. I miss it so much, but you know, there's pros and cons, right? Like it's really hard not to see your faces, whoever you are that's watching this. I love feeling the energy in a theater and sitting in the back and watching my film and hearing the different sound systems and when people laugh and when they may sob, and that's really important. We don't have that right now, but what we do have is we have a lot of accessibility. So one thing that I'm actually doing a lot of advocacy work right now in the film field is advocating for filmmakers with disabilities and accessibility, greater accessibility. So one of the things that has been wonderful about this situation is that people who are homebound or bedbound due to chronic illness or caregiving or disability have access to the Naples International Film Festival in a way that they might not in a theater where I don't know how accessible your theater is, but many theaters across the country don't necessarily have, you know, more than 1 or 2 wheelchair seats that are not necessarily well placed. And so I think that that's really exciting to me, like the fact that this Q&A could be captioned easily and accessible to people. That's exciting. And, you know, and working parents and folks who can't afford it to come out to the theater every night. I think that's one of the positives of this mess.
It's tremendous for you to look on the bright side that way. We do have a very accessible community, but I will share that we've all been adapting. We've all been trying to figure out how do we still reach our audiences. And one of the benefits of the technology also for us is that people do live in multiple locations. And so maybe someone who's never participated in the Naples International Film Festival because they're not in Naples during this time of year is participating right now from their northern or western climate.
That's so awesome. And the fact that I can be talking to them from LA, you know, and we're all in this together.
Well, that does bring me to one of the quotes that I remember that feels there are two that feel so relevant during this pandemic time. One is that the role of technology can improve our lives. that was so obvious in Moholy's thinking. And right now, here we are, or your work with people who are not able to access it. The other one that I loved is, and maybe it's not always a discerning quality measure, but in our time of social media and photography, his description that the literate of the future is not a writer necessarily, but a photographer.
Yeah. No, those are, I'm so glad you took those away from the film, because they are incredibly prescient, like evergreen, I think provocations, insights into human nature and what it means to be creative. Both of those, because the one about technology is, you know, he's optimistic. Moholy is incredibly optimistic, but he also cautions people against letting technology use them, so to speak, but rather the relationship with technology should be innovative, should be turning the technology so that it's used in a way that maybe it wasn't designed to be used. So yes, you can use it in all the simple ways that it's meant to be used, but what if you try something new with it? What if you know, look at light in photography and photograms in a way that the camera wasn't really designed for? And then, or bend plexiglass in organic ways. And then the other point you made about the illiterate of the future, right? Reading images. That was, you know, 1920s. Right. He says the illiterate of the future will be the one who cannot read images. Right. And we have to read images. It's so important now, not only with social media, we're all creating images and reading them, so to speak, but also with the ways that images can be manipulated, you know, for political purposes. What do we do with that? How do we not let that technology go unbridled? How do we as humans use it for good? And that's important for us to think about right now.
It also goes back to his marketing, design, advertising influence, that we have to read things that are just subliminal, that we don't even realize what we're comprehending.
Yeah, we need to think critically, and I think also, and then also we do need to trust images sometimes, you know, and trust facts, and sort of understand when we can, like when an image does speak the proverbial 1,000 words, you know?
That's great. I'm going to push a little bit on this one, because in my takeaway, I don't remember there being much talk about the discernment of quality. And sometimes I feel that photography and technology are inhibitors of efficiency, but maybe not of quality. Was there anything left on the cutting room floor that may have addressed his commitment to quality? Because obviously we see it in a thorough process, in committing to innovation, in touch and feel. Was there anything you could elaborate on there?
Let me just make sure I'm catching what you're saying properly, which is like experimentation and production and is a value, but also how do you kind of curate and make sure that quality is a value too, right?
That the ultimate product, message, whatever the ultimate design is, has a high quality to it as well.
Right. We didn't, so there's nothing on the cutting room floor that was like a scene about that, but I think the way that we tried to approach it in terms of Moholy's work was to show that there was a tremendous versatility in his own work, but also, you know, and he was prolific, but also a sort of consistency in the concepts that he was making art about, right? Like the ideas and the questions were always high quality. The things that he was trying to pursue, the problems that he wanted to solve, and some of them got very big, like camouflaging a city in World War II. Like that's a big project, an important project, like, you know, so the questions were always quality. And I do think, I want to believe that like asking quality questions and having a quality idea will lead to, with the right processes, to that kind of work. And then I also think like they were apparently, it was an art school and people were critical of each other, and like the photographers in the scene about the photographers where later on the alumni, you know, the later students who like Ken Josephson and the Aperture 5, that scene, like those people were all playing off each other. Barbara Crane, like they wanted to be better. There was a bit of competition that I think led to, like, healthy competition that led to good quality.
Well, wasn't that another one of his, that everyone can improve through art and design? Like you just become better humans. Yeah.
He believed that everyone has an inherent talent, and part of it was like peeling away the onion skin of like what you've been told is, you know, good or okay, or and getting into a more essential, more essential questions about materiality and about technology and our relationship to each other. Yeah.
His conviction is something that you captured really beautifully. I mean, whether he was standing up for the principles of the school, the philosophy, the funding of it, students that would be accepted, I really was touched by the conviction that he had in the total approach. So
well, I'm sure you can relate to it, being the head of a, you know, an incredible arts institution where you're, you know, one minute you're talking with an artist about their work, and the next minute you're talking with a funder or a board member or a community, you know, member. And Moholy had those relationships, and he held a lot in his short lifetime and accomplished quite a bit in the backdrop of, you know, war. He was, you know, war, poverty, exile, you know, being an immigrant in the US. And that was something that I think his ingenuity as an immigrant in the United States comes through. And I really wanted that to come through. I'm the grandchild of immigrants and to the Midwest too. Like, and I remember my grandfather, who was in Chicago at the time too, telling me stories about, like, during the Depression, picking dandelions off the street to eat for their family, you know. And there's a kind of ingenuity and willingness in that generation to do what it takes. And I think in a lot of immigrants, and it's something that does make America wonderful. And I think that Moholy, you know, that idea that he could come here and build that school and create something that was so influential and so humble at the same time, that was inspiring to me. And yeah, I don't know if I kind of got off track there, but I think I'm speaking to what you're saying, what you're noticing about his character.
Yes, and I can also say I had moments of relating to his challenges of balancing and juggling all of those things. I don't have war and exile, but we do have a little pandemic going on, so maybe I can use that too.
You can relate.
But that is only to say that we also, just like he experienced in Chicago, in Naples, we have an incredible community that is committed to growing this culture and our belief in culture, and in a multidisciplinary space that celebrates everything from independent film to an orchestra to a museum, great architecture. So he was not limited by anything in Chicago, as we can see. And I love that it's still in existence. And that
it's totally transformed over time. The school is different now, but very much alive. And then in Hattila, that was another big theme in the film, was legacy, right? Yeah. Like, what kind of legacy do we want to leave? What's an important legacy? Is it, you know, money or one iconic work of art, or is it about what we're going to teach the future and the students that he had, for example, and the experiments that were ahead of their time, artists who couldn't have known him, who are, you know, 2 generations later still being influenced by his ideas. That's a different kind of legacy than we're told in terms of like a fairy tale type of legacy, you know?
And she was honest in her recount. You know, she shared not only the pretty parts, but she was honest in sharing the whole talent and personality and human. That was great.
Once I met Hattila, thank you. And once I met her, I knew we had like a different kind of film, right? It's not a cold biography. It was the warmer, you know, more feminist view, frankly, of a person that I'm interested in telling. And when I say feminist, I mean looking at something not from a kind of auteur perspective, as if he's some holy, you know, superstar figure, but rather looking at something as a network of, you know, looking at someone's life through a network of relationships and and unexpected legacies. And Hatula really she was into that. So we got along great, and she was very honest, very generous, and has kept an incredible archive of her father and her mother's work.
Yeah. Well, there's another lesson there, and I think you live it, I live it, but no matter what you're trying to accomplish, we all get it done with other people. And
yeah.
She told that story well of him as well.
Yeah.
Was there anything left on the cutting room floor that you wished you had been able to work in, or do you really feel like this was the complete story you had to tell?
I mean, I am so happy with what we accomplished. The structure being, not totally linear. The ways that we were able to showcase different art that Moholy did, from film to design, graphics, the legacy. I think there were a couple of scenes that we shot that were wonderful. Like the artist Jan Tiki went to the Art Institute and took students from a local high school in Chicago to go see works by Moholy and now I'm forgetting which other artist it was, but there were a couple of photograms that he showed these high school students and was talking with them about, like, well, do you consider yourself a photographer? And they said, no, I'm not a photographer. And he said, well, what's in your pocket? And they all have a phone. And, oh, right, I am taking so not that they were stupid, but like at all. They were super smart kids, but they just weren't thinking of art as something that they do, right? Whereas they're doing it all the time. They're framing, they're thinking about how to present an image of the world to others. And so that was a cool scene, and we tried to fit it in, but it didn't end up working with the narrative. That's one example. And then there's some archival moments, of course. I would have loved to include more about Lucia Moholy, who is an incredible artist and thinker, and was such a great partner with Moholy, collaborator. There should be a film about Lucia.
There you go.
Yeah.
Which brings me to what's next for this film.
Yeah, no, good segue. So this film it's on the festival circuit online right now, and we hope to have news about distribution fairly soon. So that'll be exciting. The website is thenewbauhaus.com. And I have a website for my company too, Ajna Films, AJNAfilms.com. So we'll give, people can sign up for the newsletter if they want to stay abreast, ask us questions, etc. And we are going to be doing screenings with not just festivals, but also museums and art institutions. So like, I think LACMA in LA is doing a screening in December. We did one recently with the Houston MFA, with Parrish Museum. So if you're connected in your community outside Naples, if you're watching this, to, a library or museum that wants to present the film or community center, we'd love to have it shown there.
That's terrific. And outside of this film, I know that the last year, 2020, has had great impact on the industry and all of art industries. Is there something new you're working on? What is the next project? Is there anything you'd like to share about what's next?
Sure, yeah, I can share. I am directing another feature documentary right now that's in post-production on a contemporary artist named Jesse Crimes. Jesse was incarcerated for 6 years in federal prison. And while he was inside, he created these large-scale masterpieces that he smuggled out piece by piece. So we're looking at the US justice system and some of its injustices and the ways that it's not working through the eyes of an artist. And Jesse's work right now is actually on view at MoMA PS1 in New York. If anyone's in New York, he has his large-scale 30-foot mural, Apocalyptine, that he made while he was in prison is there. And there was an article in Art Forum, in the September issue of Art Forum, about him and some other formerly incarcerated artists too. And so that's been a project I've been working on actually kind of concurrently with the new Bauhaus, and that I'm excited to share with the world soon.
I look forward to seeing it.
Thanks.
Well, Alysa, it has been a pleasure having you as part of the film festival. Congratulations on this wonderful documentary. And for me personally, you've opened my eyes to this, not just the Mies van der Rohe Bauhaus, which of course I knew, but the new Bauhaus, and how every day I may be interacting with elements of its legacy. So thank you very much for your work. Congratulations. And I wish you continued success.
Thanks, Kathleen, and thanks to everyone who watched. Truly, it's an honor to be here.
It's great. Thank you to our screeners, to everyone who's been viewing the film, to our guests. Thank you to Alysa, our audiences, and truly thank you for supporting independent film and the Naples International Film Festival.